Welcome back to Gemma Movie Recap Channel. Today, we have an exciting movie to discuss called Mojave Diamonds, released in 2023. The plot revolves around a former MMA fighter and his brothers who embark on a mission to save their abducted family from a dangerous crime syndicate, all because $50 million worth of illicit diamonds has been stolen. Before we dive into the details, we kindly request your support by subscribing to our channel and activating the bell icon for updates. Without further ado, let's get started. But before we start, please support our channel by subscribing and click the bell icon for future notifications. Now, let's start. Following a hunting excursion, two brothers named Joe and Danny find themselves engaging in a conversation about their sibling Roy's troublesome behavior. Roy, who frequently finds himself in and out of jail due to his involvement in violent acts as a free fighter, becomes a point of contention between Joe and Danny. Despite Joe's disapproval, Danny holds onto the belief that Roy possesses goodness and hopes that he will eventually leave his dangerous line of work. Meanwhile, we are introduced to Roy, who is preparing himself for an upcoming fight in the arena. Unlike his brothers, Roy exhibits a relaxed and carefree demeanor. Just moments before his scheduled fight, Roy finds the time to engage in a passionate make-out session with his girlfriend, Lisa, despite the presence of the eagerly awaiting spectators. As a former Special Forces soldier, Roy's superior combat skills allow him to effortlessly overpower his opponent in the match. After successfully knocking out his adversary, Roy returns to Lisa for another kiss. However, the situation takes an unexpected turn when it becomes apparent that his opponent was not truly defeated, and given the absence of rules in this particular match, the opponent seizes the opportunity to retaliate. Roy's boss, Julian, became infuriated by Roy's arrogance, and as a result, he ordered his men to apprehend and punish him, blaming him for a loss of $10 million. Julian, a merciless mafia leader, claimed that he had never experienced defeat in the past 4 years. Believing that Roy's recent performance suffered due to his preoccupation with his girlfriend, Julian decided to administer punishment. Shockingly, Julian cold-bloodedly executed Roy's girlfriend right before his eyes. Subsequently, Julian transported Roy to an undisclosed location, which turned out to be a hidden warehouse housing a substantial quantity of rare diamonds obtained from a mining site. Julian commanded Roy to transport the diamonds to designated locations as Point A and Point B. Completing the task would result in a payment of $1 million. This enticing proposition both intrigued and surprised Roy, as he questioned why Julian had chosen him instead of utilizing his numerous well-armed men. Julian then divulged his reasoning, citing Roy's exceptional driving skills as the primary factor. Additionally, Roy's two brothers, who possessed military backgrounds, could potentially assist him. The final reason was that Roy had caused Julian significant losses. Julian further threatened Roy, stating that refusal to accept the job would result in the ruthless execution of his brother Joe, sister-in-law, and niece. Still, in a state of confusion, Roy attempted to call his brother Joe for help. However, Joe, still harboring resentment towards Roy, ignored the call. The following day, Danny, who remained actively involved as a soldier, grew concerned as he could not reach his brother. Determined to find answers, Danny decided to visit Joe at his residence. Upon arriving, he discovered Joe engrossed in training his racing horses and caring for his pets. The two brothers finally reunited, and Joe disclosed that Roy had indeed called him the previous night, but Joe chose to ignore the call due to lingering frustration with Roy's behavior. Danny expressed regret over Joe's decision, believing that Roy might be in trouble and need their assistance. Despite Roy's tumultuous nature, Danny emphasized the importance of treating him well since he was their brother. Subsequently, Roy, having been unsuccessful in reaching Joe, made his way to Joe's house, where he was warmly received by his niece and sister-in-law. Danny, also present at the time, informed Joe about Roy's arrival and expressed hope for a reconciliation among the three as a family. However, Joe, fully aware of Roy's tendencies, no longer wished to engage with him, as Roy only seemed to appear when in dire straits. Following his departure from Joe's farm, Roy invited Danny to accompany him for the next few days, and Danny agreed, considering their prolonged separation. Before their departure, Danny requested Roy to provide a clear explanation of their purpose. During their journey, Roy revealed that he found himself in significant trouble, tasked with transporting an item of immense value. He emphasized that the item belonged to a highly dangerous criminal organization, necessitating their compliance with the mob boss's conditions. After enduring a long and arduous journey, Roy brought Downey to an underground fighting arena managed by his acquaintance. They witnessed an exhilarating match between two prominent fighters, Barney Boy and the imposing Big Duke. Unsurprisingly, Big Duke emerged victorious without encountering much resistance from Barney Boy. Subsequently, Roy stepped forward to challenge Big Duke, revealing his previous victory against the formidable opponent in a freestyle ring. The following day, Roy and Downey proceeded with their journey, heading towards the location where they were supposed to collect a supply of diamonds and transport them to a predetermined destination. Upon reaching the diamond storage warehouse, they were met by Polly, Julian's trusted associate, who had been assigned to guard the premises. Polly informed Roy that the diamonds had been cleverly concealed inside beverage bottles to deceive any potential police interference. After an exhausting drive, Roy and Downey made a stop at a convenience store to rest and replenish their energy with food and drinks. However, their respite was abruptly interrupted when a group of fully equipped masked individuals stormed into the store and initiated a violent robbery. Tragically, one of the storekeepers was fatally shot during the ruthless attack carried out by the masked assailants. Unbeknownst to Roy and Downey, the robbers had targeted the diamonds they were transporting. Realizing that they were being set up, Roy fought back against the assailants, using his firearm to defend himself. However, his efforts proved futile. Determined not to give up, Roy and Downey pursued the robbers, seizing a car from the store's parking lot to give chase. Downey grew increasingly suspicious and pressed Roy for answers regarding the nature of their cargo and the identities of their pursuers. Roy evaded the question, remaining focused on apprehending the robbers. Overwhelmed by the sheer number of adversaries they faced, Roy and Downey were eventually forced to abandon the pursuit. With no other options remaining, Downey once again confronted Roy, demanding to know the truth. Reluctantly, Roy confessed. He revealed that they were transporting a substantial quantity of diamonds, valued at around $50 million, which belonged to a merciless mafia boss. That night, Julian received distressing news that both Roy and the diamonds were nowhere to be found at the agreed-upon rendezvous point. Filled with rage, Julian jumped to the conclusion that Roy had betrayed him, suspecting that he had stolen the diamonds for himself. However, the truth soon emerged. It was Polly, Julian's trusted associate, who orchestrated the theft and framed Roy and Downey. Stranded without a functional vehicle due to the damage sustained during the chase, Roy and Downey had no choice but to traverse the city on foot. Roy expressed the urgency of retrieving the diamonds promptly, as he feared Julian's wrath and the dire consequences that could befall Joe's wife and daughter if he failed to recover them in time. Joe returns home after running errands and discovers that his wife and daughter are missing, seemingly abducted by Julian as collateral for Roy's unfinished task. In a state of shock, Joe contacts Roy and Downey, who have reached a specific location. Roy reveals that Julian is responsible for the disappearance and vows to rescue Joe's family promptly. Roy contacts Julian to clarify the situation, but Julian, convinced of Roy's betrayal, issues an ultimatum: retrieve the diamonds within 48 hours or face the consequences of Joe's wife and daughter being harmed. Downey, enraged by Roy's deception and the endangerment of their family, initially leaves him. However, after regaining his composure, Downey reconciles with Roy, realizing the importance of working together to save their loved ones. He contemplated possible solutions to their predicament and pledged to help his brother exact revenge on the mobsters. Unbeknownst to them, two police detectives named Johansson and Garcia were observing their actions from a nearby hill. The detectives were investigating Julian's illicit activities and his gang. Meanwhile, Joe refused to remain idle and took matters into his own hands, equipping himself with weapons and joining Roy and Downey. When he reached his siblings, Joe, overwhelmed by emotions, impulsively attacked Roy, unleashing built-up frustration. Johansson and Garcia continued their surveillance, curious to see the brothers' next moves. Later that day, Julian sent a photo to Roy, revealing that Joe's wife and daughter were held captive by him. Fueled by urgency, Roy led his brothers to Julian's headquarters to rescue their family. The next day, they arrived at the Mafia stronghold, with Joe taking immediate action, utilizing his lethal military skills to eliminate several guards. Once the area was secure, Joe and Roy entered the headquarters to save the hostages, while Downey served as a sniper, ensuring their safety. The battle extended beyond the headquarters as turmoil erupted between Paulie and Julian within the building. Paulie eventually confessed to being the one who had stolen the diamonds from Roy. His actions stemmed from his resentment towards Julian, as the diamond business belonged to Paulie's family. He believed Julian was unworthy of leading the business, being only an adopted son. Amidst the commotion outside, Julian took advantage of the distraction and incapacitated Paulie. Finally, Joe and Julian came face to face, their weapons raised. However, both of their guns were out of bullets. In a twist of events, they decided to engage in a barehanded duel.
Fuck out of here!
Due to Julian's larger build, he easily overpowered Joe, knocking him to the ground. Fortunately, shortly after the altercation, Roy arrived to assist his injured brother. Despite pointing his gun at Julian, Roy hesitated when Julian started yelling, allowing Julian to brutally attack Roy. Surprisingly, Paulie, who had seemingly been defeated, rose again and unleashed a barrage of gunfire at Joe and Julian. Believing he had killed them, Paulie ordered his men to capture Roy. Unbeknownst to Paulie, Joe had survived the shots thanks to the bulletproof vest he was wearing. Meanwhile, Downey, unable to contact his brothers, decided to infiltrate the base. Inside, he reunited with Joe, who had managed to survive the ordeal. Determined to rescue Roy, they embarked on a mission to pursue Paulie, who had taken Roy captive. In their quest, Downey contacted his military colleague, Gemma, seeking assistance and the necessary firepower to dismantle the mobsters. We transition to Paulie, who has arrived at a heavily guarded location where Joe's wife and daughter are held captive. Paulie sets up a fight between Roy and his best fighter, with the lives of Joe's family hanging in the balance. If Roy emerges victorious, they will be released, but if he loses, their lives are at stake. Despite his exhaustion, Roy must confront the opponent, who proves to be stronger and delivers brutal blows to Roy's body. Meanwhile, Downey, Joe, and Gemma track the location using Roy's cell phone and arrive at the scene. Downey, acting as the skilled sniper, takes out two of Paulie's guards with precise headshots. As Roy continues to struggle, his determination pushes him to regain his strength and turn the tide of the fight. He defeats Paulie's top fighter, while Joe, Downey, and Gemma eliminate Paulie's remaining men one by one. Ultimately, Joe successfully rescues his wife and daughter. He confronts Paulie, who attempts to escape but is stopped by the timely arrival of the police, preventing Joe from exacting his revenge. Shortly thereafter, FBI agents arrived on the scene to apprehend Paulie and seize control of his illicit operations. Agents Johansson and Garcia expressed gratitude to Joe and his brothers for their assistance in capturing the criminals. As the story concluded, the relationship between Joe and Roy began to mend. Roy decided to retire from his career as a free fighter and committed himself to helping Joe manage their family-owned ranch. We would love to hear your thoughts on the movie. Feel free to share your comments in the section below. Don't forget to give us a thumbs up and show your support by subscribing to our channel and enabling notifications. If there's any other movie you'd like us to recap, please let us know in the comments as well. Stay tuned for more exciting recaps in the future. Thank you and see you next time.